innovation group in Houston runs smoothly. She's responsible for onboarding companies, making sure they're moving ahead, working with their engagement with the mothership, if you will. So Dr. Mack, she earned her degree a few years back, undergrad from Cornell University, majoring biology. And then she decided to do a PhD, cell molecular biology at the University of Pennsylvania. She moved away from academics at that point, beginning her career at Wyeth Oncology as a senior research scientist, and then eventually took over more and more leadership roles as the company at Wyeth was acquired by Pfizer. With Pfizer, she was in charge of IND studies for a number of cancer projects with some primary focus on antisense therapeutics, bispecific immunotherapies, and antibody drug conjugates. Then decided to shift over to Roche, became director of external innovation, oncology discovery, and her job there was to look for oncology, immuno-oncology opportunities, and working with academic collaborators to see what projects could be moved into the company. She moved on to Ipsen, again, senior director of external innovation, and finally now she's joining JLabs. We're broadening her portfolio, still very interested in cancer and oncology space, but pretty much any therapeutic disease area she's focused on with the JLabs. So Dr. Mack, delighted to have you in Houston and delighted to have you at today's workshop. I'll turn it over to you and I'll mute my mic.
Great. Thank you so much, Stan, for the introduction and really for the invitation to present at this workshop. So I'd like to just begin by just giving you a basic overview of how Johnson & Johnson have the various models for collaboration. So as I said, I'm fairly new to the Johnson & Johnson organization, so I really refer to it as universe. It is quite global, and there are multiple ways to intersect within the company to promote some collaborations. So just to begin, a little bit of background for the company for those who don't know. I mean, Johnson & Johnson really is kind of a household name for many of us. But just to give you a bit more, it's like it is the largest and most diversified company within the world. It's been around for over 130 years, has 3 very major business segments, that I'll go further into. And over time has really acquired over 250 operating companies kind of embedded within the organization. There's a high degree of sales in the 82 billion range across these 3 different sectors. And we certainly sell our products in over 175 countries. And there are a lot of employees, and make it truly global with 130,000 of us spread throughout out through multiple countries. So because of this kind of global reach, Johnson & Johnson has certainly begun to realize that innovation can happen anywhere, and that it really behooves us to be able to access that innovation. So the quote here by Paul Stoffels, which is our Chief Scientific Officer and Vice Chair of the Executive Committee, really wants to emphasize like the global reach of the company and our abilities to really build these networks to help sustain innovation and also to foster it and recruit it into our organization to really help it reach its full potential. And why do we do this? We understand that innovation is really quite necessary to success. So as we certainly can generate more value from a product that is highly differentiated and innovative versus ones that are kind of simply me too and follow-ons. And to reach this differentiation state, you actually, to have the maximized value of its market potential, you really need to have speed. And these are 2 aspects that can all be done within one single company. So really being able to look outside of J&J behooves us in terms of having be able to increase the value and market potential of these various products. So when you said my background has been a lot of focus on external innovation, and I've worked for several large pharmas, and all of them really have the same aspects of it, wanting to, or actually in many cases needing to, access externalization, innovation. A lot of it's because we understand what is the assets of working in a large industry. And many of these things are aspects that entrepreneurs really need for success. such as there's a strong infrastructure embedded within industry. We understand the processes for bringing drugs through discovery and through development. We certainly have the capital in which to enable a lot of this. And along with that, the expertise. There is a lot of trial and error that has occurred in drug discovery and development. And so you have a lot of that, inherent experience within the industry in order to understand what has worked in the past and how to improve it. On the other side, as I said, for the industry needs the entrepreneurs to really have those kind of innovative ideas. So those who can take those very early stage risks and respond to rapidly to the data that it generates. Part of that is through having kind of small, nimble teams that can really pivot from one aspect to another, depending upon how data or other metrics are moving forward. And because of this nimbleness, I think there's also a bit of a cost savings having small teams, very focused, that can really promote innovation. The idea is that if we combined all of these aspects, that we really can reach to that value position of highly differentiated products that are brought to the market rapidly, really to serve the needs of the patient population. Now, J&J is one of, I think, the few organizations that have really tried to take a very holistic review of how we access innovation. So really having a very comprehensive global solution to engage innovators across our multiple sectors, be it consumer, health tech, medical devices, vision, pharmaceutical, and then a few other of our cross sectors that really intersect multiple aspects of these key sectors. And so the solutions really kind of spanned all or the early and late stage aspects of drug development and drug discovery. And they're fairly segmented into 4 key areas. The first is our innovation centers. So this is a group of 4 centers located in life science hotspots. And I'll show you that later, but you can imagine those are in kind of South San Francisco, the Boston area, located in the EMA to access Europe and also to access Shanghai. So we're located over 3 continents and key areas of focus for life science. And the idea is that these innovation centers build these kind of broad networks to connect them to innovators within this area. And they focus on relatively early stage deals and accelerating these programs to the next stage. So over the course of 5 years, they've done approximately 500 deals and been able to deploy over $1 billion since 2013. We next have the actual venture arm of Johnson & Johnson, referred to here as JDDC. So they invest based upon the strategic interest of the R&D or the sector organization. And they have over 46 years of experience investing within healthcare. They made over 40 investments just last year. And they tend to partner with the innovation centers to identify new companies in which to cultivate for truly innovative and disruptive technologies. And just last year, they also deployed about $500 million within capital. And the part of the organization that I am in is the J Labs. This is, as you consider, perhaps the most earlier stages of innovation, where we really are there to cater to the needs to early stage startups when we're just still incubating the idea for proof of concept. So we have 13 locations across the globe. Another 2, which we refer to as JPADs, which are not standalone J Labs, but perhaps embedded into other innovation centers within North America. Collectively, our portfolio is about 600 companies. And one aspect of working with J Labs is that you can get visibility to the internal R&D organization or within our innovation centers and perhaps promote some collaborations with them. So we also have about 145 collaborations just within J&J alone, but we also have the resources to increase the visibility of these companies even to outside investors. And then finally, to service our more later stage, further developed programs, we have a straight business development arm, which really focuses on late stage deals, meaning mergers and acquisitions, deals of high value. They also do some alliance management. But the Janssen Business Development Group really works to establish biotechs and pharma companies. They also have over 40 plus years leading licensing and M&A, and then they also have the same intent to really drive our internal R&D portfolio. So once again, depending upon the stage of your innovation, we have multiple aspects for which you multiple components in which can aid your innovation and spur you on to the next step. So just to talk a little bit further about our innovation network. As I said, I highlighted before, we have the 4 innovation centers kind of centered in, one is centered in San Francisco, but it really services all of Western North America, Australia, and New Zealand. We have an innovation center based in Cambridge, Massachusetts, in London to service the EMEA, and also in the Asia Pacific region in Shanghai. More importantly, and highlighted in blue are where we have all of our JLabs location. And you can see here we are based at the Texas Medical Center here in Houston. And for our benefit, we're actually also co-located with the Center for Device Innovation, which really puts our JLabs program into a very unique position where we can help service not only the oncology and pharmaceutical early stage companies, but really can help service the needs of the medical device community. So I talk a little bit about like why here, why Texas? We certainly think it is a burgeoning area for a life science cluster, particularly not just in Houston, but a lot of the surrounding North Texas areas, Austin, San Antonio. There's certainly a very favorable business climate here, and Houston being like the 4th largest city in the area within the US, it also has a very diverse and fast growing population. So when we're thinking about healthcare, healthcare dynamics, access to healthcare, personalized medicine, we can really start to see what is the value of having a very diverse population in which to kind of understand how drug development and clinical development can thrive. So along those lines, we know Houston is a global destination for clinical care and medical research. The TMC is the largest medical complex within the world and has over 54 institutions. These other metrics are really quite striking, with this other 10,000 hospital beds and over 10 million patient encounters a year. This really makes it the 3rd most clinical trials are done in Houston within the US at the TMC. And this is really driven by the TMC having a single IRB and many metrics for matching patients to kind of speed up recruitment. So it makes it not only a great hub for doing perhaps oncology research, but really doing clinical research in general. And we feel we can really capitalize upon that. Amongst that, as I said, we have several prestigious academic institutions in here. Just highlight, for example, MD Anderson. We think they have a lot of focus areas that are aligned with the interests of Johnson & Johnson, both computing, oncology, and digital health. And we can see how these various areas intersect themselves. There's a lot of funding within this area to really, once again, foster the innovation, either coming from the national government, being in a NCI designated cancer centers, or also more of these local initiatives such as the CPRIT funding, which has given a lot of contribution to not only expand, but retain a lot of the oncology specific companies. And so they have some more specific with our own JLab our location at TMC is once again that collaboration to the medical device innovation center located also within the TMC. So for my J&J, my current portfolio, right, is like we certainly find there's high value to being situated really within the heart of the TMC. We have some infrastructure that is uniquely equipped to service the biotech and medical device communities. Majority of my portfolio, we can certainly talk a bit more specifics about this, it's divided into pharma and medical devices and maybe a small amount for consumer health. But amongst the pharmacology or pharmaceutical companies, primarily it's focused on oncology. And as I said, this between our position within the TMC, we've also been able to really complete several deals with J&J itself. Part of coming into JLab, it's a no strings attached. But the idea is that you will connect also to some of our internal researchers to really increase the value of your own early startup company. So just to give you a bit more about how the JLab model works, we have, once again, a no strings attached incubator space where we can have wet labs and private office space. Each one of those 13 JLabs may have slightly different offerings, but these are all the basics. And some of them have their own specialities, such as Once again, our location at the TMC has a lot of specialty concept labs that are utilized for medical devices, for 3D printing, and for prototyping. We also offer a lot of operational management, meaning helping to set up other service contracts, shared equipment, some of the safety compliances that have to be done for early stage startups. So it really kind of alleviates some of the management activities that early stage startup companies have to do on their own. And finally, yes, we also can help reduce the capital investments from early stage startups by having a lot of shared equipment that's available to you that you don't need to purchase on your own, but can utilize within our organization. So each site can offer a variety of, based upon your needs, a variety of office or lab-based structures. And certainly as your company grows, we can make more and more space available. But here, as I said, highlights just the basics of either having a workstation, very specific concept labs dedicated to very specialized activities, private offices, private labs, obviously with the basic needs to do life science research. But more importantly, besides the actual physical space that we have, we think that there are other resources that really make it beneficial to join the JLabs community. The first is our resource hub. And here we have, once again, all of the resources you would think you would need for a startup company can actually be compiled within one hub for one-touch access. So these could be anywhere from having, giving you recommendations for human resources to help your own employment, to offering discounts to various lab suppliers or equipment suppliers that really can help stretch the early stage startup dollars. We can help with some relocation services, web services, anything, as I said, your basic needs for running a small company can be made available in the Research Hub. And they all offer kind of discounts as being part of the JLabs community. Finally, what's also important for early stage companies to succeed is really access to investors, access to capital. So we have an investor hub, and we try to kind of facilitate these interactions with VCs by either doing spotlight presentations where we really can kind of be very selective and matching up potential investors with our high profile companies within our portfolio. But we're also figuring out better ways how to do this virtually to ensure that every company is getting the proper exposure to the VCs. One aspect that we think being in a, perhaps in this quarantine, is no one's traveling at the moment. So really connecting people virtually has become so much more commonplace, which really could give us a much larger global reach and global access to investors around the world. So we think we can take advantage of the current no travel restrictions and have a lot of programming that can really elevate our venture capital exposure. And finally, what's also quite important with the JLabs membership is really access to what we refer to as a JPAL. So these are internal people within J&J who have an expertise in whatever select area of the startup companies. Ideally, they provide mentorship for the companies and really help them make connections to support their growth. So they can provide some power technical expertise, but also help you make connections within the organization to either drive some of these collaborations or perhaps help you understand a particular challenge for your next stage of growth, whether that might be understanding what the regulatory pathway could be or how to make a more cost-effective clinical trial design for your particular program. So they have been quite a valuable resource, and it's something that we're trying to certainly promote and sustain as we increase our potential portfolio companies. And finally, we not only really want to support up on the research side, but we do have opportunities to both educate and network. Part of the education would be our Science First series, where we really focus on some topic of key interest to the R&D community within J&J or also within our ecosystem. But we also have various networking opportunities, either to meet people within J&J or also to meet other companies within JLabs. We also have certainly noticed that networking internally within the companies can really also kind of foster collaborations, and each company can utilize research from another to also make some innovative approaches and, perhaps novel uses of the technology that they hadn't seen before. So we value all of those, and we have a variety of upcoming educational programs that we will be rolling out in 2021 to really aid in that development. And so finally, just to once again talk about, how do we really co-create within J&J? We talked a bit about how the multiple ways we can access J&J, the funding opportunities, company incubation, R&D collaboration, access to expertise, and certainly we can have this kind of flexible deal structure depending upon the needs of the partner. But we can also kind of zero in on the three strong sector areas, really like what is Johnson & Johnson looking for when they do kind of look into these co-creation models. So I'll just keep it fairly high level to give you an idea of what the various sectors are and what some of their key areas of interest would be. So within pharmaceuticals, we're divided up into 7 therapeutic areas or 6 therapeutic areas, and one area focuses on platforms, that being immunology, neuroscience, oncology, cardiovascular metabolic diseases, infectious diseases, and pulmonary hypertension. We also look at platforms, meaning those can affect small molecule biologic development or the speed of drug discovery, and can be applied across the various therapeutic areas. We obviously are quite strong still in consumer health, but in terms of the innovation, we're still looking at innovations within the areas of both self-care and skin health. Medical devices, through various acquisitions of other companies, we are still focused on surgery, orthopedics, interventional studies, and also vision. And finally, we have these cross-sector initiatives. Things like health tech and data sciences can be applied across all of the various sectors for improvements in our drug discovery and development and market access. We also have a World Without Disease initiatives, where they're really looking for ways to prevent and intercept diseases at earlier stages, before you even perhaps need a therapeutic. And finally, we also have a whole separate lung cancer initiative that is also very much focusing on intervention within this disease at very early stages. So we encourage you to, make the connection, right? Meet with us virtually at all of our local, regional, or global partnering events. Full free. We also have these online challenges that we're looking for innovation in very kind of key areas. So we encourage you to submit your ideas. You can also reach us out through social media. Actually, the company is really quite active on both like the Twitter platform and LinkedIn. So you'll often see posts for our various ways to engage with us as individuals and also with the broader leadership. And when travel is open again, we're certainly open to have virtual tours of all of our sites across the globe. Feel free to email me. My email address is highlighted there. But you can also sort of broadly email at jlabs@its.jnj.com. And you can also really access all of these innovation features through jnjinnovations.com. So once again, thank you again, Stan, and I will turn it over to you for the next presentation.
Dr. Mack, very good. I appreciate you taking the time and the presentation. We're going to hold questions till the end of Dr. Lahiri's presentation. But if you have any questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat, and we'll rejoin the chat questions in a little bit. So anyways, I'm delighted to now introduce Dr. Shamita Lahiri. She joins us, I believe she's in Boston right now. Is that correct, Dr. Lahiri?
Yes, I am.
All right, so we are keeping her late, and I thank her very much for staying late. But she is Associate Director for External Innovations at Boehringer Ingelheim. And so I will refer to them as BI so I don't screw up their name. But Dr. Lahiri, she is really responsible for identifying innovation and establishing collaborations with scientists like those on this call, really across North America, with a particular focus on trying to find collaborative projects that might be able to be brought into the BI ecosystem in the areas of gene therapy, regenerative medicine, and various rare diseases. So a lot of that overlaps with what a lot of individuals are doing in the medical center. Dr. Lahiri received her PhD in cell and molecular biology at Boston University at the medical center there. After graduating, and this may be of interest to graduate students on the call, she moved to AstraZeneca and to complete her postdoctoral studies, and enjoyed that experience so much that she never went back to academics, as far as I can tell, although she kept publishing quite a bit. But she stayed then with AstraZeneca for about, I want to say about a decade, but she will correct me if I got that wrong. Worked with AstraZeneca for about a decade and was responsible for starting to run many of their preclinical and clinical research studies. Recently, I can't put a time frame on recently, Dr. Lahiri, is this last 3 years, I want to say, that you moved to BI? And you're now leading efforts, and this is kind of I didn't even know BI had this group, so I'm glad to learn this, even at my advanced age. She's now leading efforts for their venture group, known as the External Innovations at Research Beyond Borders. So I think that's kind of a real cool effort that BI has, and I'm really excited to have her here to help educate us on what BI is doing and how they're learning to move other projects into their company portfolio. So Dr. Lahiri, delighted and welcome you from Boston.
Thank you very much, Stan. And actually, I appreciate your very kind introduction. When you were speaking about my roles in BI, I could understand how from outside there's a lot of confusion between different groups. So as you will sort of see me lay out how BI's external innovation is, you're probably able to see where I fit more easily. I'm actually very glad that Dr. Mack provided such an excellent overview of J&J. I just wanted to tell myself, as you notice, I was a postdoc in AstraZeneca and had a long career in research and in clinical projects. But I had noticed that the external part of the research was not as much in many of the companies. And at that time, I had already realized the effort that J&J was doing in its outreach and efforts, because I have myself attended many of those J&J meetings, open to anyone who wants to sign in. And now I value companies and projects that are in the incubator space of J&J. So I can sort of see the holistic view of what J&J does, even for other companies who are trying to get into more external innovation partnership space. So that was an excellent presentation from my own experience, as well as I can see how that fits in truly from the value of external innovation. Now, my background is a little bit on the research part of partnering in Boehringer Ingelheim. I just wanted to spend a few slides to just, if I can forward it. See how do I move? Oh, there you go. Good. So I just wanted to spend a few slides on Boehringer Ingelheim, because not many people know about the company, but it is actually a family-owned company that is originated or is from Germany, and it's a very old company. It was established in 1885, and most of the focus is on human pharmaceuticals, but they also have an animal health arm, as well as a biopharmaceutical contract manufacturing. And not only do they make their own products, they actually collaborate and partner with other companies and help make their products as well, and particularly in the large molecule space. We are about 50,000 employees, and 20% of them are focused on research and development. We actually, being a privately owned company that is very dedicated to research and development investments, we actually invest almost 20% of our net human pharma sale back into the research and development, which I, as a research scientist with a career where I've seen different companies have different levels of interest in that, I find that actually quite motivating myself. I think I'm gonna, sorry, I think I'm having, okay. It'll take me a while to flip the slides. These are some of the products that we have in the market. Maybe you'll be familiar with some of them on TV ads or not. But the company has been, for the last 130 years, have been dedicated to put in various novel medical entities that can be helpful to the patients. The last 6 years, we have had 17 products in the market, many of which are in the breakthrough therapy areas. And that sort of emphasizes the fact that our company realizes the value of innovation in these research efforts to make the drugs that are truly going to be breakthrough and help patients that need them. And so this is, excuse me, I'm sorry, I just want to make sure that I am actually able to move my slides in a way. Let me do this. Can you all see my slides? No, this is not a good view. Is that good? Can you see the slides?
Perfect.
Sorry.
Maybe back to the presenter view. Or you could do this one, whatever's easiest.
Actually, when I'm doing that, I'm just making it a bit smaller. So I'm a bit worried that it'll just go to that corner side. Are you not able to see this at all?
Yep, no, we can.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
All right. So then, so this is coming to the train of thought. So our portfolio sort of shows that we actually are very keen on having products that have truly innovative mechanisms. And so first in class therapies and treatments are the main focus of our portfolio that can allow us to improve the patient lives. And we know that we can achieve these through incubating creative ideas and pioneering emerging fields of science so that we can accelerate these drugs fast to the patients who really need them. And we do that. Dr. Mack has actually already given an excellent example in J&J, and we do that as well through collaborations. In fact, 50% of our pipeline is actually anchored in the external innovation partnership. So we do invest a lot in the early stages of the companies, new ideas, new science, and working with partners closely to actually have that innovative ecosystem. BI is actually I've been there for 2 years now, and my experience in BI has been that most people are very, very science oriented. In fact, even for the business development activities, the science and the scientist or the evaluation of science comes first and everything else falls into place. So I already can understand the culture where any scientific idea, be it from inside or be it from outside, from scientific labs, research from postdocs or any other avenue, if the science is innovative, there is a great deal of enthusiasm to put everything else together to allow that science to go effectively through its procedures to get into the patient quickly. And so I'm just reiterating here, there are various ways of partnership that we look at. Academic and industry partnership. There are various public-private partnership where we work with biotechs or even sometimes large companies in collaboration with various projects. And we also have, much like J&J, we also have a venture fund team that will fund early ideas for investment into biotechs and startup companies. They often also invest into getting IP out of academia and then starting up the companies. So we have various models, and the model fit the requirement of the partnership that we are looking at, as well as the collaborators and their interest in partnering with us. I had a few slides here to sort of highlight different collaborations that we have had in the recent years with Bridge Biotherapeutics and idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, with Amal Therapeutics, which now is a part of BI company for cancer vaccines, with Dicerna, RNA interference for chronic liver disease, and of course in your area with MD Anderson for cancer. So these are a few examples to show that we have a variety of partnership and different ways in which we can collaborate with different groups to bring things forward. And much like Dr. Mack mentioned, we have core areas. There are 5 core therapy areas that we are heavily invested in our research. These are cardiometabolic diseases, central nervous system, immunology, oncology, and respiratory disease. And if any one of you are interested in these areas, and if you want to know any mechanistic focus areas that we are more interested in, please go to our website on partnering. We update them very often, but what we try to do is understand, in particularly for therapy areas, to put forward the areas that we know would be of greater strategic interest. And often the other areas are not because of a lack of innovative science there, but perhaps some portfolio decisions where certain projects already are in those areas, and maybe other areas could be of greater interest because of the balance of projects in those areas. But nonetheless, if you have any research that are in any of these things, please go and see that. And then there are contacts there, or please contact me and I'll be more than happy to forward your information to them. The group that I reside in is Research Beyond Borders. And to me, I found that to be a very unique group, because that is located within the research of BI. And yet it has a very innovative remit of external innovation. And I'll speak a little bit about that group. We also have technologies where we look for innovative technologies that can support any of these therapeutic areas, or if they are in an area outside of this, then they partner with the Research Beyond Borders team and find a way to move it forward. So for the Research Beyond Border, where I am, it actually, as the name suggests, it's a group that is truly beyond borders. And beyond borders is geographic, because we are very global. In fact, when COVID happened, many people had to sort of work on their own, had to learn to work remotely, even though they were located in certain global areas, whereas our team had the least issue with working in remote, because we always worked through virtual mechanisms, because the team are all around the world. And I appreciated the value of that, actually, when now we are in different mode and yet we can work very effectively. So the beyond borders is not just geographical, it's also beyond borders of, because we are looking at areas that are outside of our core therapy area. And that allows us the freedom of having a very therapy agnostic interest to research. And then we are also very agnostic to modality. So we are sort of open to anything that has a very innovative flavor to it, and has the potential to take it for the product to be taken forward to the clinic for unmet medical need. And the other thing that's unique about our Research Beyond Border group is, unlike the therapy areas where there's a large emphasis on a lot of internal support for them, Research Beyond Border is actually a more leaner team. And this is something that Dr. Mack was mentioning in the beginning of a slide as well. To do external innovation and to be very effective, you need to have a lean and agile team. And that's what was created when this concept was devolved. And so we actually work primarily with the external partners. In many cases, they would be the experts who we interact with because of their expertise in the disease area. In other cases, when many companies are sort of pseudo-virtual, we then take the product forward or the project forward by aligning with the correct CROs or other hubs of research that can provide the support to those projects. We are very project-centric, which means that, again, in line with the therapy agnostic and modality agnostic approach, if we like a project, we would actually take it forward and get all the support all the way to the clinic. And so that, to me, was a very unique way of working, where you could have a very open space and look at various areas that you could be interested in, and have a commitment from VI to take those projects forward. There are certain priority areas now: gene therapy and regenerative medicine. We also had infectious diseases. immunoinfection. So these are some areas that we are looking at, but that doesn't mean that we are only boxed into those areas. We are open to many other ways and many other science that we can look at. If you, I noticed that the group is familiar with various processes of drug discovery, etc. So I just wanted to again emphasize that our interest is in the discovery and preclinical development phase. And I say that because that is probably the sweet spot for a lot of academic research as well, where in the earlier stages you can find the either novel molecule or novel target. And that new therapeutic concept is something that we could then partner with and align and move it forward to the clinic to help make a drug and help the patients. Oftentimes I've seen, as in your case, there are a lot of groups that are pretty savvy, even in academic environment, are very savvy about the drug development process. So I do also mention that it's not just the very, very early discovery, but also in the cases where you have a lead that is identified, you have done some safety studies already, even those projects are of interest to us. And what we can bring to those projects is our own capabilities and that we have. Our research groups are very strong. We have a large biotherapeutic group, NCE, so a small molecule group, safety, everything that you would find in a large pharma, and the rigor to execute projects at preclinical stages. And of course, like any other big pharma, we can provide the support and the guidance to take these to the clinic through clinical development, regulatory processes, marketing, and sales, etc. And we do this not to the extent that J&J does, but we are appreciating the effort and the value of reaching to the community earlier, where there is acute thinking of innovative things, but perhaps not a way to understand how we can effectively move them forward. So we have various grassroots activities. We have BI office hours, where people, a startup or an entrepreneur, even from an academic group, can reach us, and we can arrange these office hours where key people with key expertise internally in clinical, regulatory, IP, or any other area that the startup company is interested in can come to us, and we can provide a panel of discussion and feedback on how to progress your project forward. We have BI Academy, where we have different topics in which different not just BI, but other companies can participate and have a discussion that again enables the ecosystem to take the project to the next level. And then we have the BI Innovation Prize. It's not like J&J Lab, but we give tickets to people where they can then go to get different lab spaces and take their product to a level that could then be useful to the investors. And the other thing we have is an open me option where we put our molecules out for you for free. So we have molecules that are in different clinical stages that have been perhaps parked for other reasons in different phases of clinical trial, or a very mature preclinical compound or sets of compounds that you can take for free. And what that allows you is to take these compounds and then try out in different disease models. Perhaps by looking at a mechanism, you can say, well, that mechanism can be also useful in this area of science that I'm very interested in. So you can take that compound, try it out, and if you find something that is very exciting, you certainly can reach to us or try to do something on your own to take those compounds forward. So I find this to be actually a very invigorating. We have had many projects through this that have been very exciting for us and have resulted in different and very good therapeutic concepts after the studies. So I just wanted to summarize again some of the key things that I'd mentioned here in terms of just the external innovation part for academic industry partnership, perhaps, is that we have this grassroots initiative where we can provide guidance or interactions to folks who are thinking of or a startup, but don't have the clarity or want to have early discussions. We have open me concept where you can take our molecules, try it in your disease biology area, and then if you do find a good outcome, you can reach out to us or find other ways to take this compound forward. In the group that I am in, that is inside the research, which is Research Beyond Border, we mostly work through collaborations, and we collaborate with our internal group and with the external group to take the projects forward. But we also, I wanted to mention the venture fund group, which is sort of a firewall from the internal research, but they do have similar strategic view on innovation, and they can fund projects for companies to start up outside and then develop that. And depending on the exit model, they can either become an IPO company or they can reach back to BI and then work with BI at the later stages. I think my final slide here is just to sort of summarize and emphasize the key, I would say, essence of partnership, particularly from the research side, is that we really value new ideas and new science. And if you have something of that kind, certainly reach out to us. Being independent, and I had this experience when I was in AstraZeneca actually for some of the projects, that sometimes your expectation from the stock value, I would say, prevents you from spending too much time in certain areas just because it's just seen as a strategic interference sometimes. What I have observed so far in BI is that being a privately owned company, they can sort of define their own pace. And so they commit to, and I've already witnessed that, a long-term vision of collaboration for various projects, provided that they find the value in that for patient and unmet need. And so we have 50% off our interactions and collaborations, and we think we can provide the complementary expertise that many young entrepreneurs need, but have great ideas and then take them into the clinic. So with that, I'm thrilled to be a part of this group and for discussion, and happy to take any questions that you might have.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Lahiri, and again, thank you, Dr. Mack. I'm going to use my prerogative and not be rude, but jump in with a quick question for both Dr. Mack and Dr. Lahiri. Is what would you both say if you had to say? So you both talked about disease areas that you're kind of interested in or your companies are interested in, kind of broad strokes. What would be, the 3 hottest areas, and not just area, but the 3 hottest diseases that you would really want and be so excited to see a technology come across your desk? So, it's one thing to say, I'm interested in oncology, but no, we're really, really interested in a cure for glioblastoma. So if you had to specify 3 disease areas, really specific, what would get you, both of you, very excited? How's that for pressure?
So at least third. Well, we said with at least the focus for J&J, obviously it's not simply one therapeutic area, right? We still cover a lot of the sectors. So it could be a much more long-winded question if we had the time. But if we simply kind of focus in on oncology, key interest is actually a lot in bladder disease. Some of the top cancers, like lung cancer, is said is a clear place to try and intervene in. And then also prostate cancer. That's been something that has been quite difficult. It also is Movember, right? So it's still very much on our mind. And it's certainly one of these indications that has not really, it responds to anti-androgen therapy, but there's always resistance. So it's something that the more we try to hit it, it still comes back. And it's not responding like some of the other solid tumors to immunotherapy. So something like within that space for oncology would be quite specific. But we're really branched out to a lot of our therapeutic areas. So really looking at areas of neurodegeneration, neuroinflammation, those are targets, and then how a lot of these areas kind of intersect. And to be quite surprising, they all kind of intersect around aspects of immunology, neuroinflammation, autoimmune disorders, etc. And they interplay within a lot of those particular diseases. What's really new for me also is the focus on medical devices. And so I think like Dr. Lahiri was mentioning how a lot of times there's a sweet spot for early innovation in pharmaceuticals to be able to look at targets that are very early and have something novel that you can then de-risk, it's a bit more challenge in the medical device community to go too early. So we're looking for interventions for orthopedics, for cardiac and the other things that simply improve the outcomes of surgery too. So this is something I think is still kind of a new area, how to apply a lot of health tech to improvement of health of overall outcomes in operating rooms, which is kind of key interest to us.
Okay, very good. Dr. Lahiri.
And I can add a little bit, Stan. I think that what is most interesting, perhaps maybe from a research perspective, I would say that any disease that has an unmet need and has patient is of course of interest. Our core therapy area define their interest, and as Dr. Mack mentioned about oncology, every disease area scan their interest depending on what is in their portfolio at the time. In terms of partnership, and what are the areas that they are looking for that is currently not there, but they know from the patient's unmet need that it is important. I can speak for Research Beyond Borders a bit because I can look at it a little bit more closely outside of the therapy area. And certainly one of the areas of interest for us is regenerative medicine. And partly for that is because of the aging population and the senescence being an issue. And as people live longer, there are diseases related to that that are really not as well understood. So we actually value both understanding of basic research there, so targets and understanding of what targets may play a role, as well as therapeutics that may enable them. So we are looking at, for instance, sarcopenia, hearing loss, pancreatic diseases, osteoarthritis. So we have a group of disease, but we approach that disease through mechanism. So let's say you have a mechanism that may be common to senescence. We feel maybe that would have a help that would support many diseases all towards perhaps the same outcome, which is with age, certain tissues degrade, and so we can prevent that.
Okay, very, very good. Now open it up then. If anyone has a question, just unmute your mic and fire away, or unmute your video and also fire away. Otherwise, I'll call on people. I'm not shy. Anyone?
I have a question.
Please, Jake, go ahead.
For those who are looking to do a startup company in pharmaceuticals, but don't actually have any outcomes yet, but have some theoretical basis for what they want to pursue, is there any resource that either of you would suggest looking at to kind of get some capital or interest and lab space to kind of move further to test out some theoretical portions of an idea?
Yeah, well, first of all, that's kind of the sweet spot of where JLabs should be to really help you bring your idea up into a proof of concept. So while we want to be kind of highly strategically aligned with our internal groups and really help people promote research collaborations, you're right, they have to be at a certain stage before there's some certain level of engagements. But we are thinking about, well, can we have a few models in JLabs where we actually have more perhaps a short-term residence, just to get you up to that proof of concept stage where you can then begin to shop around the idea to other investors. So I still think JLabs could be an interesting place for you, certainly depending upon what your focus area would be. But I'll also turn it over to Dr. Lahiri to suggest any other suggestions.
Yeah, no, I just want to add to that because certainly JLab is an excellent option. There are lab centrals and others in Boston area that people often access. But I would also say that because for the way Research Beyond Border operates, it's almost like you must be familiar with SBIR, phase 1 grants or phase 2 grants type of thing. If you actually have a concept that you want to test and you think that that has an outcome that could support clinical use and patient use, you should actually talk to not just us, but any venture fund as well as research groups that are in external innovation very, very early on. Because my understanding is every team will have their own sweet spots, but they will also be interested to to partner with you earlier, at least with the discussion earlier, if there is a value in that science to that patient population. So certainly does not harm at all to have conversations. You will get different views. Even within a team, you will get different views, but that will allow you to understand different ways in which you can do the same thing and approach the same thing.
I think also just to check with Dr. Lahiri is that it is important to really kind of network and workshop these ideas fairly early on, right? Just to understand the perspective of the, to understand where you need to go. And that can change versus, one company or the other, but some of the basic foundations of what's considered validated at each particular stage is kind of a commonality amongst us all. So just, yeah, speaking to internal people within the innovation centers, within the venture group, will give you some perspective upon where the technology will, what the potential would be, and potentially help drive you along avenues that you may not have thought.
Well, thank you very much.
Following up on Jake's question, I see Andrea, I'll let Andrea go ahead and then I'll follow up on Jake's question if I don't forget it.
Oh, thank you both for great talks. I just had a quick question. I wondered what you guys thought the most unrecognized value a company might have that would lead to its acquisition or partnership? Like outside of the science that they're presenting, like what part of the team?
No, I think that's interesting. I mean, we mostly really do focusing on aspects, but as I'm also saying external innovation too, as you begin to truly assess a company, it's not only just about the science, but it also is about the team and what advisors that they've put together. Do you feel that this team can actually execute on the strategy that they have laid out? And then when you do partner with particularly a large pharma group, it is about that relationship that you can develop. So having teams that are really focused on collaboration are also quite important to have, true success. I've certainly been in discussions, I'm sure Dr. Lahiri has been in discussion where it becomes very combative, and that really just puts a stall to really developing a productive relationship. So I do think, yes, that is, it's not something that is written, but it's still very much a interpersonal relationships that really do help programs move along, both with working externally and even internally. So for me to be able to advocate for a particular company, I also have to cultivate those kind of same relationships internally, where I develop a certain level of trust that they understand my recommendation and they understand the dedication that it will take to bring something to the next steps.
I concur on that. And actually, I would say that at least for because we do a lot of on the ground scouting, talking to people, companies, and I would say that that most of the time, the most productive opportunities are those where you actually not only like the science, but you also like the people who are presenting the science. And in a big company, you may always find other consultants or may find other expertise when the smaller company does not have all the expertise. But what you cannot do is, in a partnership model, really ensure that the discussions are getting implemented, right? And so the dynamic of a person, and it doesn't always have to be someone who always says yes. Of course, they are more close to the research, so they should always challenge back with the science. But that dynamic is actually critical to success. I truly believe so. Yeah.
Thank you.
Questions from the group? Let me follow up on Jake's question very, very quickly. So if one has early stage questions on their technology, their discoveries, their theories, as Jake said, how would they get in touch with BI, let's say, and is the grassroots group a organization, and if so, how does actually one, perhaps how would Jake even touch base with them? So that would be for BI and Dr. Mack. Should Jake just send you an email and for you to say, yeah, I can send this on, or yeah, maybe not, that type of thing? So really, how exactly should they go about moving something forward?
So for BI, I think the one thing that I mentioned is that we have a link to partnering that has the email address to, there are a few key people who are dedicated to just make sure that the emails get looked at, and then either a response that is not in strategy or a response that is positive is given. So they have that remit so that they are the right person to just directly send an email. But I would also say that send to someone like me that you know, but in our organization, we say everyone is, has external hat, which means that if you really know anyone in BI, you should always feel free to reach out to the person and say, look, I'm interested. Could you connect me to the right person who can do that? And most, at least after a particular level, most people would know who is the right person to connect with. They are, as many other companies, we value external partnership very much. Even if we say that certain opportunity is not a fit at the time, does not mean that it's not a fit. It just reflects at that moment what might be our strategy. So we truly believe that maintaining relationship, long-term interactions with people who are innovators and are enthusiastic is always in the benefit of us as well as people who are interacting with us. So keep your network, keep your interactions. And I will say, look at Dr. Mack's resume, right? I mean, people move around, and yet they carry with them network and the knowledge and the same aptitude of external innovation. So getting to know more people is always a great thing.
Thank you, Dr. Lahiri. And as I said, I mean, depending upon the subject matter, I'm certainly happy to provide some feedback. You know, like my email address is certainly publicly available, but then accessing us through J&J Innovation. And particularly every time you attend one of these public JLabs events, you will also see people of different subject matter, and there's an openness to just reaching out directly to them with a basic question. Or if you actually do want to officially apply, it's a bit more formalized process. But either way, the goal is to really give you some feedback, you know, even for an early stage asset. As Dr. Lahiri said, we all do have a kind of a broad network. I'm still actually developing my network within J&J, but certainly outside of that, can certainly put you in contact with any kind of particular subject matter if that is the basic question. One thing I also think is, I said, fairly unique about our site here at TMC is that connection to the Center for Device Innovation. So I'm not sure what particular asset you're talking about, but those are people who are just simply right next door, or I guess now, you know, at least in Houston, right? They probably don't come in on site anymore, but they also have a lot of expertise and, you know, just prototyping, bringing devices to the next stage. They sit on advisory committees, they sit in accelerators, et cetera, and can also maybe connect you to other people within the region that can answer more specific questions. What I'm also learning too is that even within our JLabs portfolio, there's a variety of expertise. So even the more I learn about the companies that are there, they also have, you know, general interest and would be able to provide guidance to you. So as I said, it's fairly easy just to reach out with some questions, and we're more than happy to connect you with the most appropriate person to address them.
Great, thank you very much. Other questions from the group?
The innovation prize with BI, is that a yearly application cycle or?
We have it, I think, well, we used to. I think this one got canceled because of COVID, end of the year. There was one in November. But we are trying to make it global and a bit virtual, but we have a couple of times in the year and in different hubs.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I don't think that at Houston we've had as yet, but I'm sure that we're thinking of expanding.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And what about opportunities? I know we have a couple, several graduate students I recognize on the call. Are there opportunities in your organizations for them if they're interested in perhaps an internship? You know, maybe I realize a 3-month internship might be productive. It might not be, but what do you both view as kind of internship opportunities for graduate students per se?
So we have, maybe I'll just speak, we have internship opportunities. We have various, I think they probably send out flyers or advertisements or something. I don't exactly know where they do, but I just wanted to emphasize the other thing, that we have a very strong postdoctoral program. Now, when I was in AstraZeneca, I was the first person who sort of was in the group and first person, because they just didn't have that concept of postdoctoral at that time. Now they do, and in BI particularly, our head of human pharma research is very, very passionate about the postdoctoral program. They actually encourage that because it allows people to do research and the postdocs can publish, which means that they don't work on the primary project, they work on projects which are, so they will not work on projects that will deliver IP and prevent you from publishing. They will have a subset of a project that is within the strategy of the main project, but allows them to do some basic research and publish. And in that process, they get the experience of a big pharma environment, which is how I had, which was very beneficial for me when I was in my early career. So I think that's an excellent opportunity for, I mean, there are ads I already know out for postdocs. So at least that is something that I thank you for bringing that up, Stan. That's actually another way for people who are early graduates to think about interfacing with industry.
That's excellent. Dr. Mack, how?
Yeah, so for JLab specifically, we don't, obviously we're an incubator space and we have a variety of companies that could be open to having student interns at their site. But otherwise, I would reach out to the broader Janssen R&D organization. And they would definitely have graduate programs. For example, we interacted with one within our medical device who was at the Ethicon, which is our medical device wing, who did a student internship for 3 months and really did a wonderful case study analysis of one of our early stage companies in terms of what its market could be, what the potential could be. So those opportunities are available, maybe not specifically within JLab, but there could be some routes that we could connect you within the R&D, or as I said, perhaps within another early stage company within our organization who'd be interested in having a grad student there to work on a project for a short time.
Okay, no, excellent, because I definitely know there are a number of, shall we say, training grants that are being considered out of the medical center, and sometimes those can be, shall we say, scored very well if there's an industry partner where the trainees might be able to do a 3-month, 6-month internship, even if they're at the postdoc level, so that they can understand better the needs of industry. So, all right, we'll have further conversations on
Yeah,
this.
and that would be quite interesting. As I said, now that we're all relatively virtual and location doesn't matter, right? So we could still probably work within someone within Janssen R&D, but not have to be physically within the Pennsylvania area or San Francisco. So yes, saying if you could, make those connections and people are already coming in with some funding from the academic, we can see if we can find some alignment with some internal R&D.
We're counting on J&J to get your vaccine out the door very soon, so we can get rid of this virtual platform and find what our new normal is, right? But,
very close. I also work for Pfizer too, so we'll see who wins.
No, that's excellent. Anyone else for our guests? Well, if not, last chance. You have their emails. Feel free, if you do have any questions, to reach out to either Dr. Mack or Dr. Lahiri. And again, I want to thank them for taking the time out of their day to give us some insights. And those that couldn't make the call, everything is recorded and the slides will be there. And so we now have another good contact and through the two of you. So thank you. Dr. Tomlinson, anything to turn it back to you?
No, just much thanks. We really appreciate you both being here. I'm sure you'll be hearing from the folks that attended the call and those that watched the video. So we really appreciate you and potential opportunities to network with you.
Thank you. So thank you so much for the invite.
Thank you again. Really appreciate it. Enjoyed it.
All right. Everyone stay safe, stay healthy, and keep your sanity, okay, until we find something to cure this, okay? So bye for now.
Bye-bye, everyone.